Hey again, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Discussions of Darkness. Apologies in advance for obvious technical difficulties, but needs be when the devil drives, and I wanted to get one more episode of this show recorded before I had to go to the Chicago Steampunk Expo this weekend. And, well, there is a topic that has been on my mind for some time, and though I've talked about it before in text format, I haven't actually brought it up on this show, and I figured that if I was going to have a place to talk about it, this is the place to do it because, well, quite honestly, I feel it's an important issue and not enough people actually know about it, and it can solve a lot of difficulties for a lot of players and storytellers out there. I am, of course, talking about fixing the beat system. Now, for folks who may not be familiar, I'll give you a quick crash course. In role-playing games, generally speaking, you earn experience points for the actions that you take as a way to build up your character and to gain new abilities and new powers. If you're playing a game like Dungeons & Dragons, what happens is you get experience points, and then once they hit a certain plateau, you gain a new level, and the new level comes with a whole bunch of, packaged abilities. Now, the Chronicles of Darkness operates in a different format. The way this game works is you have your pool of experience points, and they operate sort of as a currency that you can use to buy new abilities and to upgrade the ones you already have. So, if you wanted your character to become physically stronger, for instance, you would spend a certain amount of XP, and then you would just get another dot of strength. If you wanted a new skill, if you wanted a new supernatural power, you would spend XP in order to get those things and add them to your sheet. And in the past, what you would do is you would, at the end of the session, the storyteller would look around, and he would say, "Good game, everybody, have 4 XP. And then everybody at the table who showed up and participated in that game would get 4 experience points. And sometimes there would be a little bonus of, one player may have overcome unusual adversity. Another player might have done something really cool, while they were role-playing. Bonus XP for you. However, this changed with the beat system, or the story beat system, depending on how you want to refer to it. And I see the intent, and the intent was not necessarily bad, but the idea was to structure your character and the things your character is doing around a sort of meta framework, a meta scaffold. And it uses the language of storytelling to sort of give you an idea of what it is your character is trying to accomplish and to give you a way to really think about your goals and how you're trying to move forward with your story. The problem, of course, is that most people who sit around a table to play an RPG are not authors. They are not familiar with the language of storytelling. They don't think about their characters that way. And while you can sometimes teach them to do that, you can get that point across, a lot of the time that's not what players are there for. They're there to play a game and to do something that makes them feel cool and their character looking interesting. They don't necessarily have an overarching story that they want to tell. Sometimes they just want to be here and participate in a game with their friends, doing something a little weird. And that can be an issue because while most people who sit down at the table are not authors, all of them are gamers. And the beat system puts numbers attached to these things you can achieve. And as soon as there are numbers, as soon as there's a reward, like I said in a previous video, now you're incentivizing players to act and behave in certain ways. And some of the things you can earn a beat for don't really enhance a story, but you can abuse the crap out of them if all you want is more XP. For example, you earn a beat every time you take a certain amount of damage. You earn a beat every time you have a normal failure, and you can then just decide, nah, that's a critical failure, give me a beat. And sure, theoretically, you can only do these things once per session. So once you go down the checklist, you're out of stuff. You can't just spam it over and over and over again without your storyteller just reaching out and going, no, I'm not giving you more rewards for that. You did it once, that's enough. The problem you have is that if half your table decides, I'm going to follow the beat system, I want to have a bunch of really achievable small goals for my character and a longer term goal that I can still achieve in the next couple of sessions. And then I want to do all of these other things on the checklist, but half your table is just ignoring it entirely. They don't want to put down actual goals. They don't want to think about their character advancement that way. maybe they're actively avoiding fights, or they just don't want to take a failure and turn it into a critical failure. Now you have half the table earning all of the possible XP every session, and half the table earning practically none. And for one game session, that's not going to be a problem. But for 4 game sessions, 6 game sessions, an entire arc of a campaign, the whole chronicle, you are soon going to have a massive disparity between the players who are engaging with the system, who are doing the math, and the players who don't want to do that. They just want to come here and tell a story without doing an entire character outline and trying to write it like a novel. This is not just conjecture. If you read through some of the releases for Chronicles of Darkness, you'll see suggestions that you should have a communal beat pool, suggesting that in some games you had players where some of them were earning all the beats and some of them just didn't care. And the solution proposed was just let the ones doing all the work carry everyone else, which is a great way to cause resentment and to get everyone to stop interacting with the beat system. The problem is it is so ingrained in the mechanics of Chronicles of Darkness. Ignoring it feels like you're leaving this massive amount of just machinery and not doing anything with it. And it's connected to so many different things that just ignoring it and going back to saying, okay, everyone gets this amount of XP every session. While you can do that, you're leaving so much stuff on the table. And there is a perfect, elegant, graceful solution to this that a lot of people just didn't come across because they didn't pick up the book that it's in. Now, Deviant the Renegade is one of the more interesting games from the Chronicles of Darkness line, if I'm honest. And you're all playing strange deviant creatures. It's one part government conspiracy, one part superhero origin. And it's kind of make your own monster of you're all on the run from various conspiracies, or sometimes you're all from the same conspiracy and they want to get you back. Cool concept, fun idea. However, there's a sidebar on page 97 that lots of people either don't know about or have completely overlooked, and I highly recommend you take it and you make it a part of all your Chronicles of Darkness games going forward. What this sidebar says is, essentially, don't use the beat system for giving experience points to your players. Just give everyone the same amount of XP as you would normally do if this were any older version of the game. But players who earn beats instead get a Benny for that session. For folks not familiar with the term, a Benny is short for a benefit. It's essentially usually represented by a poker chip or some other small physical item, and you hand it to the player, and they can then trade those bennies in for certain benefits as the game goes on. So as an example, let's say that you got in a fight and you got your ass handed to you. Congratulations, you get a beat for that, which means you now have a Benny. You could, later on that session, have a very important skill check that you need to pass, and you trade that Benny in to add an automatic success to the thing you're trying to do. Or you might decide, I want bonus dice, so you trade it in for more dice for your dice pool for that roll. Or you might want the 8 again rule on an upcoming roll. Maybe you need a willpower point back because you just really need something to push through. That's what these bennies are used for. You trade them in for short-term, immediate turnaround on what you did for this story. And at the end of the session, all bennies are lost. The pool goes back to 0 at the start. So if you have players now who are chasing beats, cool. You still get a resource for that. You're still being rewarded. There is a reason to do them. But if you don't care, if it's not something you want to do the paperwork for, if it's just not the way your brain works, you're not being actively punished for not participating in it anymore. Everyone gets the same amount of XP, but those who are willing to engage with this system get a small benefit for doing so. And it is a great way to just not ignore all that machinery that's present, but it fixes so many of the inherent disparities and the fact that it really encourages you to take specific actions and specific kinds of behavior over doing what might make you happy as a player, what might make more sense with the story, and all of these other things that just turns even following your plot into a numbered checklist. And that is something I wanted to talk about today because not enough folks know about this, because, in my opinion, not enough of you have picked up Deviant. So get a copy from the link in the description below while we're at it. But if you have a topic you want to see me cover in the future, if you have something you are burning to know my opinion on, please leave that in the comments below. And if you have a story about your interaction with the beat system, whether it was players doing something absolutely ridiculous, or you felt it was a really great addition to your game and you have a tale as to why, I want to know, because sometimes my experience is not the experience of gamers as a whole. So just because I'm the one here on screen holding a mic doesn't mean I'm necessarily right about things. And I like to hear from all of you out there of what are your experiences, especially if they're vastly different from mine. But that's all for this week, and hopefully I'll be back after the con and I can fix some of the technical difficulties I'm dealing with this week. But until next time, happy gaming, everybody. Thank you for staying to the end of this episode of Discussions of Darkness. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking the video and sharing it on your own social media to help boost the signal. And if you'd like to help us keep the show and channel going, don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well. If you have any questions about the topic I covered today, or if you have something you'd like to see covered in a future episode, make sure to leave it in the comments below. Lastly, please check out the link in the video description to browse all of my World and Chronicles of Darkness supplements from Ezekiel Games. So far, we've covered Changeling the Lost, Vampire the Masquerade, Mage the Awakening, and Geist the Sin Eaters, in addition to a handful of general supplements that will be useful for any game set in the World or Chronicles of Darkness settings. Thank you in advance for your support. You're the ones who help us keep the lights on, so we don't fade into the shadows.